The day I realized I had spent my whole life raising other people's children. I was sitting alone in my living room on my 72nd birthday. No balloons, no phone calls, no cake. Just me and a card from the pharmacy reminding me to refill my blood pressure medicine. I looked around the room at the faded sofa, the ticking clock, the quiet walls, and whispered out loud, I spent my life taking care of everyone else, and now no one is here to take care of me. That was the moment I finally told my story. I'm telling you this from my small home in Ohio, the same house I bought when I retired from being a nanny. The house is clean. The house is quiet. The house is empty. I used to live in other people's homes. Now, for the first time in my life, I live in my own, and sometimes the silence feels louder than any room full of children ever did. My name is Margaret Maggie Collins, and for 43 years I raised everyone else's kids. I grew up in a family where love meant responsibility. My mother worked 2 jobs. My father left early. By the time I was 12, I was already helping raise my younger brothers, changing diapers, making lunches, reading bedtime stories. People used to say, "You're a natural with kids, Maggie," and I believed them. By the time I was 20, I was working as a live-in nanny for a family in Chicago. They paid me. They fed me. They trusted me with their children. And for the first time in my life, I felt important. Over the years, I worked for 7 different families. Wealthy families, middle-class families, single parents, busy parents, lonely parents. I stayed when babies were born. I stayed when teenagers rebelled. I stayed when marriages fell apart. I was there for first steps, first words, first heartbreaks, college goodbyes. I held fevers in the middle of the night. I packed lunches at dawn. I waited up for kids who snuck in late. And when they grew up, I packed my bags and moved on to the next family. Every time, people always said, "You must feel so loved, Maggie." All those kids. But love is different from belonging. Those children grew up and went back to their real families, their real holidays, their real last names, and I went back to my suitcase. No one ever asked me, "Who will take care of you when you're old?" Because everyone assumed, "She's strong. She'll be fine." I never married, not because I didn't want to, but because I was always in someone else's life. When friends talked about settling down, I was packing again. When others saved for houses, I was saving for the next family's move. I told myself, I'll build my life later. Later never came. I retired at 67. The last child I cared for hugged me goodbye and said, "Thank you for everything, Miss Maggie." His mother cried. His father shook my hand. And then they closed the door. I went home alone for the first time in decades. No backpacks by the door. No lunches to pack. No voices calling my name. Just silence. So here I am now, sitting in my living room, finally brave enough to say the words I never said out loud. I raised everyone else's kids, but no one came for me. Not in anger. Not in bitterness. Just in truth. This isn't just the story of a lonely woman. It's the story of every caregiver who forgot to care for herself. Every helper who never asked for help. Every woman who spent her best years building other people's families and forgot to build her own. And this is only the beginning, because just when I thought my story was ending, something unexpected happened. Something that changed everything. One cold October afternoon, I went to the public library just to get out of the house. I wasn't looking for anything special. I just needed somewhere quiet that wasn't empty. That's when I saw her. A little girl, maybe 7 years old, sitting by herself at a corner table, struggling to read a book that was clearly too hard for her. She kept sounding out the words, getting frustrated, pushing the book away. I didn't mean to stop. I really didn't. But 43 years of being a nanny had trained my heart before my mind could stop it. I walked over and said gently, "Would you like some help, sweetheart?" She looked up at me with big brown eyes and said, "Yes, please." Her name was Lucy. Lucy told me her mom worked late most nights. Her dad had left years ago. After school, she came to the library until her mom could pick her up. That day, I helped her read one page, then another. By the time her mother arrived, Lucy ran to her and said, "Mom, this lady helped me read." Her mom smiled at me, tired but grateful. "Thank you." I wish I could stay with her more, but she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. I knew that look. I had seen it on dozens of parents over the years. Before I left, Lucy hugged me. No child had hugged me like that since I retired. I walked home that day with tears in my eyes and something I hadn't felt in a long time. I mattered to someone again. The next day, I went back to the library. So did Lucy. We started meeting every afternoon, reading together, doing homework, talking about her school, her friends, her dreams of becoming a teacher someday. And slowly, without either of us planning it, she became part of my life. Her mother, Angela, eventually asked, "Would you mind watching Lucy after school sometimes? I can't afford a nanny, but she loves being with you." I smiled through tears. I would love to. For the first time in years, my house wasn't silent anymore. Lucy's laughter filled the rooms. Her backpack leaned against my wall. Her little shoes sat by my door. And for the first time in my life, someone was coming home to me. But with the joy came fear, because I had loved children before, and every time they had grown up and left, late at night I would sit alone and think, what happens when Lucy doesn't need me anymore? What happens when she grows up too? I told myself not to get attached, but my heart didn't listen. It had waited too long to love again. One evening, while Lucy was coloring at the kitchen table, Angela stayed behind. She looked at me and said quietly, "You know, Lucy talks about you all the time. She says you're her grandma friend." I laughed softly. Then I surprised myself by crying. I told Angela everything. About my life, about raising other people's kids, about growing old alone, about the fear that I would disappear without anyone noticing. She took my hand and said, "You didn't disappear. You were just waiting for someone to finally see you." That night, I slept with a peace I hadn't felt in decades. Over the years, our bond grew stronger. I went to Lucy's school plays. I helped with science projects. I taught her how to bake cookies, just like I had taught so many children before. But this time was different. This time, I wasn't packing my suitcase. This time, I wasn't temporary. I was home. Last month, I turned 75. This time, I didn't sit alone in my living room. There were balloons. There was cake. There were people. Lucy stood beside me, holding my hand, and said to everyone in the room, "This is Miss Maggie." She raised me when I needed someone. Angela hugged me and whispered, "You're not alone anymore. You're family." I looked around that room at the faces, the love, the noise, and felt something I had waited my whole life to feel. Belonging. I spent decades raising everyone else's children. I gave my best years to other families. I thought that meant I would grow old alone, but life surprised me. It reminded me that love is not always returned by the same people you give it to. Sometimes it comes back through someone you never expected. And now, when I sit in my living room and tell my story, I no longer say, "I raised everyone else's kids, but no one came for me." Now I say, "I raised everyone else's kids, and in the end, love finally came for me."